can still hear the sound, not the words Remy was shouting, but the awful high-pitched shing of the champagne flute when it hit the floor. It didn't just break. It exploded, showering the polished marble with diamond-bright shards, and that was the moment I knew. That sound was the epitaph of my 25-year marriage. I was standing there, in my elegant sky-blue dress, at the head of a banquet table built for 100 guests, ready to toast my life with Remy, only to have him use the microphone to announce he was filing for divorce. He wasn't giving a speech. He was delivering an eviction notice. His eyes, usually so calculating, were shining with an ugly kind of triumph. He was finally free, and he'd planned this public spectacle, this $45,000 anniversary party, just to humiliate me. I felt the pure, cold shock hit me, not like a breakdown, but like a sudden, crystalline clarity. He thinks I'm going to cry. He thinks I'm going to run. He looked so satisfied, so utterly smug, standing there next to the massive floral arrangement. But the thing about being underestimated for 25 years is that no one ever suspects you have a microphone trick of your own. Before you dive any deeper into this moment, tell me, what's the most shocking betrayal you've ever witnessed? Share your story in the comments below, and also let me know where in the world you are watching from. Remy, my husband, or rather, the man who was moments away from becoming my ex-husband, was soaking up the crowd's stunned silence. He was basking in the spotlight, relishing the dramatic flair of his announcement. "Dear friends," he'd said, his voice a dreadful, buttery smooth rumble. "Today is a milestone, but honesty demands I speak the truth." Truth? That word tasted like metal on my tongue. He went on to describe our marriage as a mistake, referring to me as gray and boring, and not the right partner for a successful man. I scanned the room. My friend Marina's hand flew to her mouth. My boss, Mr. Boudreau, looked genuinely appalled. But then there was Sophia, Remy's mother, sitting at a nearby table. She wasn't shocked. She was beaming. That tiny, chilling smile, I'd seen it 1,000,000 times, told me everything I needed to know. They were in this together. This wasn't a sudden burst of midlife crisis. It was a carefully orchestrated, months-long conspiracy. The final calculated stab came when Remy looked over the crowd, his smile widening with calculated malice, and gestured towards a young blonde woman standing near the bar, sleek and expensive in a way I hadn't been in years. Sierra, the mistress, the one he'd called his new marketing assistant, his little upgrade. He talked about new life and new relationships, implying Sierra was the future, and I was just the dusty past he was discarding. Then came the money shot, his true objective. Naomi must leave the condo, he stated, making it sound like an objective necessity, not a theft. He was trying to publicly shame me into giving up the property my parents had gifted me. The rage that hit me then wasn't the searing, chaotic kind. It was cold and focused, like a laser beam. My movement was a silent statement. I didn't rush. I simply stood up from the shattered dream of our anniversary table and walked toward him. The room went absolutely silent, the sound of the live jazz band having sputtered out moments before. I moved with a strange, heavy calm. Remy looked momentarily confused, as if I was missing my cue to sob dramatically. I reached him, and with a gentleness that belied the storm brewing inside, I took the microphone right out of his hand. He didn't even notice. He was still caught up in the high of his theatrical performance. I held the mic, its cold metal a grounding sensation in my shaking hand, and looked out at the sea of faces. My friends, his co-workers, all of them waiting for the breakdown. My gaze found Remy's eyes, and I kept it there, watching the smugness begin to curdle into confusion. "Thank you, Remy," I said, my voice quiet, amplified to carry across the vast, echoing ballroom. It was the softest sound I'd ever made. And yet it silenced 100 people. And since we're finally speaking the truth, I let the sentence hang, a silent promise. I took a breath, letting the full weight of the past few weeks, the deceit, the late-night listening, the discovery of his phone's password, fuel my next words. "The truth is," I continued, my voice now firm and clear, holding the power I hadn't felt in years. I knew about this entire pathetic charade for 3 weeks. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Remy visibly paled, his eyes darting frantically. I watched Sophia's triumphant smile vanishing completely, replaced by pure, wide-eyed terror. I kept going, turning slightly to encompass the room. I knew about Sierra. I knew about the lawyer, Hayes, who was sitting quietly right over there, and about your elaborate $45,000 plan to humiliate me publicly and steal my family's condo. I reached into my simple black purse and pulled out a worn manila folder, my insurance policy. I slapped it down hard on the table next to the shattered glass. Remy Price was officially speechless. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The role of the unsuspecting victim was suddenly very, very vacant. The manila folder lay between us, stark white against the immaculate tablecloth, a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Remy's face was a study in pure, undiluted shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. In that split second of ultimate frozen tension, my mind, strangely, left the glittering ballroom and went back 3 weeks, to the moment the first crack appeared in the foundation of my life. It was a cold, silent memory, smelling faintly of old coffee and fear. The whispers. That's where the truth began. Not in a grand gesture, but in hushed, conniving tones behind a closed door at 3 a.m. I had been jolted awake by a familiar, unsettling sound, the creak of our bedroom floorboards near the door, followed by a low, urgent murmur. Remy thought I was sleeping. I lay perfectly still, my heart tapping a frantic rhythm against my ribs, listening to him plot my future and his. This was the moment the quiet, loyal wife died, and the watchful, calculating survivor was born. I pressed my ear closer to the thin silk of the pillow, straining to catch the fragments of his clandestine conversation. It was Sophia, his mother, on the line again. They always spoke in these late-night shifts, as if daylight would expose their schemes. Remy's voice was low, strangely vibrant, laced with an excitement I hadn't heard directed toward me in years. "We have to do this right, Mom," he insisted, the words barely audible. "She won't suspect a thing." A chill, immediate and profound, wrapped around me. She. That was me, Naomi. 25 years of shared silence, shared holidays, and shared bed sheets, and now I was she, a target, an obstacle to be moved. "Of course not, son," Sophia replied, her voice tinny and brittle, even through the phone line. "Just a few more weeks. The timing must be perfect." The hardwood creaked again as Remy returned to the room. I snapped my eyes shut, feigning the deep, rhythmic breathing of sleep. He slipped into the bed, meticulously avoiding contact, but I could feel the coiled tension in his body, rigid and restless, lying inches from me. He was a stranger. The next morning, the strangeness was amplified by his unnaturally affectionate performance. He burst into the kitchen, smelling of a new, offensively expensive cologne, not his familiar scent, and kissed my cheek with excessive fervor. "Naomi, my love," he practically chirped, "let's choose the restaurant for our anniversary today. I want everything to be perfect." I watched him, completely detached. In a quarter century, Remy had never once expressed enthusiasm for a celebration. I managed a careful, non-committal fine, watching him closely as he rushed off to work, leaving a critical piece of evidence lying innocently on the nightstand. His cell phone. It lit up a moment later with a silent notification. I approached it, my movements slow and deliberate, and read the stark reminder in the calendar app. Call S at 11:00 a.m. My blood turned to ice. I picked up my watering can and casually tended to the window plants, feigning indifference when he suddenly reappeared, having forgotten his briefcase. "Who's the S you have in your contacts, Remy?" I asked, my voice light, masking the seismic shift happening inside my chest. He spun around as if I'd slapped him. For a raw, agonizing second, the mask slipped, and I saw pure, naked panic flash in his eyes. Then he clamped down on it. "Ah, Sanchez," he mumbled, retrieving his briefcase. "A colleague from Seattle. Just consulting him on a work issue. The lie was so quick, so smooth, yet utterly transparent. I knew Remy's tells after 25 years. When he was lying under pressure, the tiny muscle under his left eye would twitch. It was twitching now, a minute, frantic pulse of deceit. I see, I replied, forcing a soft, understanding smile, but deep inside the knowledge solidified into a painful, heavy stone. He was cheating, and he was lying. He left, closing the door softly, and I stood by the window, gazing at the indifferent gray sky above our Georgetown street. 25 years. A sharp rap on the door pulled me from my churning thoughts. Of course, the accomplice. Standing on the threshold was Sophia, Remy's mother, her expensive coat and frigid, perfect smile as predictable as the tide. "Naomi, dear," she cooed, gliding past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. "Are you preparing for the party?" She settled into an armchair. "By the way, Naomi, dear," she said, her tone shifting to one of casual, concerned foresight. "We're not getting any younger. Don't you think it's time to write a will for the nephews? Just in case." My entire body went cold. She waved her hand dismissively. "But speaking of property, where do you keep the condo papers?" That was it. No more subtext. I told her dryly that they were in the safe, and as soon as she left, I went straight to Remy's computer. I tried his usual passwords. They didn't work. Then, driven by a terrible certainty, I tried our wedding date. In reverse. The screen unlocked, and the browser history confirmed my darkest fears. How to divorce when shared assets exist. Legal tricks for dividing assets. The game of quiet suspicion was now a war, and I was finally ready to fight. The search history glowed on the screen, a digital scar revealing the extent of his betrayal. How to keep the condo in a divorce. Spousal rights in property division. DC. The frantic scrolling of the past 2 weeks, laid bare, was worse than any explicit love note could have been. It wasn't just a fling. It was a cold, methodical plan for my financial ruin. I slumped into his office chair, the fine leather suddenly feeling suffocating. My hands trembled, not with sadness, but with a visceral, gut-wrenching anger. They, Remy, Sophia, and the shadowy lawyer Hayes, were strategizing to steal my home and my financial stability, viewing me as a gullible obstacle. This wasn't about love, it was about greed, and the sickening irony was that they were using our money, our joint savings, to fund their entire wicked operation. It was just then, as I was staring at the screen, that the call came. My cell phone, a jarring sound in the heavy silence. It was Candace, an old college friend. "Naomi, you won't believe what I saw," she whispered, her voice tight with suppressed gossip. "I was at Tyson's Galleria and I saw Remy. He was at a jeweler's with a young woman. They were looking at rings. She was clinging to him." The word rings was the final spike. I interrupted her, my voice unnaturally calm, steadying myself against the desk. "What did she look like, Candace?" "Blonde, about 30, very put together, expensive coat. Pretty, I guess, but superficial. They were so openly affectionate, Naomi. Are you okay?" I lied. "Yes, everything's fine. Must be a client meeting." I hung up, the lie tasting like ashes, but nothing was fine. The jewelry, the rings, the blonde, Sierra, it all lined up. That evening, Remy returned, putting on a sickening show. He walked in with a bouquet of deep red roses and a box of fancy chocolates. "For my one and only true love," he said. I looked him straight in the eye, watching for the telltale twitch. "We need to talk seriously about our future, Remy, sorry," I stated, keeping my tone level. He froze. He quickly turned on the television. "Talk about what?" he asked, dismissive. "Everything's fine, right? The anniversary is in 1 week. Let's not spoil the mood with serious topics. We'll talk after the party, okay?" After the party. It confirmed the timeline. Whatever devastating blow they were planning was scheduled to happen at the celebration itself. I nodded, feigning acceptance, but a deep, icy coldness settled in my heart. The next day provided the final, undeniable proof. Remy left early for his supposed meeting, forgetting his cell phone face down on the kitchen counter. At 11:00 a.m., the home phone rang. I didn't answer, but the answering machine clicked on, recording the message. "Dee, it's Mom," Sophia's unmistakable voice cut through the silence. "I spoke to Mr. Hayes. Everything can be arranged. The important thing is that she doesn't suspect anything until the very last moment. Call me when you're free." Hayes, the supposed Seattle colleague. The lawyer? I approached Remy's phone, now requiring a 6-digit code. I tried the dates, the anniversaries. Nothing. Then, driven by a terrible certainty, I tried the most cliché, romantic-sounding date for a mistress. March 8th. It worked. The text confirmed everything. "Sierra, my love, a little more patience. After the anniversary, everything will be resolved. The condo will be ours." And the final cruel sentence. Hayes says, "If we play this right, she'll only get half. I'll keep the condo." I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of my life. The full scope of their calculated wickedness now illuminated. Remy, Sophia, Hayes, and the grasping Sierra. They were all tangled up in a web, and I was meant to be the fly. The worst part was a message from Remy to his mother. "And if she won't sign the papers?" Sophia's reply, "She will sign. After what we're going to do to her at the party, she won't have any other option." What did they plan to do? Humiliation? Slander? I didn't wait to find out. I immediately copied all the incriminating messages and returned his phone. I needed an ally. I called Aisha Cole, my friend from college, now a formidable family attorney in downtown D.C. "I need a consultation, Aisha," I managed, trying to sound like I was discussing something trivial. She heard the forced calm in my voice. "Come to the office at 6, she said, her tone immediately serious. "Tell me everything." For the first time walking toward the office door, I felt like a general, finally reviewing the war maps. Aisha's office was a sleek fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Potomac. She listened with the quiet, intense focus of a seasoned predator. When I finished the whole sordid account, Aisha leaned back. "This is serious, Naomi, but you are not lost. You reacted in time." She drilled down to the key asset, the Georgetown condo. I explained that my parents had gifted it to me, and Remy was only added to the title months later. "That can make all the difference," Aisha confirmed. "He wants to push you into an emotional corner. So you sign a waiver. You need to gather evidence, move funds, and most importantly, let them believe their plan is working." She gave me the counsel of a true friend. Document everything, secure my finances, and maintain my silence. Leaving her office, I felt a flicker of hope. However, the war had already escalated. As soon as I walked through my front door, Remy was there, checking himself out in the hallway mirror. "You look kind of run down today, huh?" he blurted out. "Forgive me, but you've let yourself go a bit lately, Naomi. Turning 50 isn't the end of the world, but you need to take care of yourself." His words were a crude attempt to justify his betrayal. He announced he would be gone all day Saturday for a meeting, code for a date with Sierra, and Sunday he'd be setting up Sophia's new smart TV, code for another strategy session. The comparison, the dismissive cruelty, the calculated lies, it only hardened my resolve. That night, while Remy was showering, I accessed our joint bank account online. The numbers confirmed my fears. $30,000 had been quietly siphoned off over the last month. He was using my half of our savings to plan my ruin. The audacity of it all forced a brittle, nervous laugh from my throat. But then, my eyes fell on a letter I had tucked away, an envelope that had arrived a week ago from a German notary. It was the document I hadn't dared to process yet, the one that changed everything, the ultimate ace up my sleeve. My Aunt Josephine, my father's older sister, had passed away in Munich. She was childless, and she had left her entire substantial estate to me, her only niece. I hadn't told a soul. The list of assets was staggering, a sudden seismic shift in my financial reality. It included a beautifully maintained apartment in Munich valued at $800,000 USD, a bank account holding an equivalent of $570,000 USD, and most lucratively, a luxury investment condo in Miami Beach, Florida. The total value exceeded $3 million. I, the gray, boring wife he was planning to discard, was now a wealthy, independent, and completely solvent woman. I quickly opened my laptop, not to browse for divorce lawyers, but to research international property law, how to transfer the funds to an account solely in my name, and most importantly, how to protect this new, vast wealth from the husband who saw me as an easily manipulated fool. The next day, I executed the first crucial part of my counter-strategy. I went to see Mr. Perry, an old acquaintance and a sharp real estate lawyer who had handled the closing of the Georgetown condo years ago. I sat across from the older gentleman in his dignified, wood-paneled office. "Mr. Perry, I need to ask about the M Street condo." He pulled out an aged file. "Do you recall who purchased it first? Where did the money come from?" He peered over his glasses. "It was unusual. The funds came directly from your parents' account. And here it is. The original deed of gift lists you as the sole recipient. Remy was added 2 months later as your husband. A wave of fierce relief washed over me. A premarital asset. He can only claim anything if he proves he invested in major renovations," Mr. Perry explained. "I was protected. Leaving that office with a confirmation document in my purse, I felt the first true surge of power. The confirmation from Mr. Perry felt like a physical shield. My home, my sanctuary, was legally safe from Remy's greedy hands. But the sense of security was short-lived. I arrived home to find a thick official envelope from Germany, the final legal papers for Aunt Josephine's inheritance. Reading the summary, which outlined the apartment, the cash, and the Miami Beach condo, made the reality sink in. I was financially free. I was rich. I was independent. This vast new reality had arrived just in time, transforming my status from vulnerable wife to formidable opponent. I sat in the living room, surrounded by the physical evidence of his betrayal and the paper evidence of my unexpected salvation. Remy shouldn't know. Not yet. My phone rang. It was Remy, his voice dripping with an almost manic cheerfulness. "Naomi, my love. I was thinking, let's really celebrate. Friends, colleagues, everyone. I already reserved the ballroom at the Watergate Hotel for 100 people. 100 people. Isn't that expensive, Dee? We're supposed to be saving," I asked, testing him. "Don't worry about it," he scoffed. "The money is there. The important thing is the impression. Everyone needs to see how happy we are." I agreed calmly. He said he had a meeting with partners, which I knew meant Sierra or Hayes. The audacity reached its zenith that afternoon with the arrival of Sophia. She came bearing a gift, a slim white envelope she handed me with a saccharine smile. "Naomi, dear, this is from me to you." I opened the envelope. Inside was a business card, Hayes and Associates, divorce and property law, with a handwritten note, "Free consultation any time." They were so certain of their impending victory. The sheer arrogance of the gesture left me breathless for a moment. "Thank you, Sophia," I managed, my voice dry. "Very thoughtful." "I worry about you, daughter," she replied. Daughter. For the first time in 25 years, she used that word, right before the expected kill. After Sophia left, I found more proof. A crumpled card from Mr. Hayes in Remy's jacket pocket. The same lawyer, the same plan. Remy came home late that night, cheerful, and once again smelling of that sickeningly expensive perfume. The scent of his younger woman clinging to his jacket. He hugged me, oblivious. "Everything is ready," he announced. "Menu, guests. It will be unforgettable." "Dee," I asked, my gaze fixed on his tie. "What cologne are you wearing? That's not yours." He hesitated. I got on the elevator with the neighbor," he stumbled. "She wears a very strong perfume, and it clung to my jacket." He then went on to reveal the final stage of his public spectacle. "At the anniversary, I'm going to give a special speech about our life and our future plans." "What plans?" "You'll see. It's a surprise." I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard the inevitable murmur. Remy was in the hallway on the phone with his mother. I crept out and pressed my ear to the bedroom door. "Mom, everything is perfect. After the toast, it will all just happen. She's naive like a child. She's always trusted me." His contempt was a physical punch. "And if she doesn't want to sign the papers?" Sophia asked nervously. "She will sign," Remy assured her. "After what I tell her in front of everyone, she'll have no other option. Everyone will see what she's really like. And then, Sierra already knows. She's even coming to the anniversary. I'm going to introduce her as my new assistant." I went back to bed, a horrifying calm settling over me. They were all coming to the party: the husband, the mother-in-law, the mistress, and the lawyer, all of them ready to watch me crumble. I smiled into the darkness. The morning of the anniversary was not filled with nervous excitement, but with grim determination. I moved quickly, my mind a sharp, functional machine. First, the bank. I opened a new personal account and transferred exactly half of the money from our joint savings. Next, I went to Mr. Perry's office and retrieved the confirmed document stating the Georgetown condo was my premarital property. This piece of paper was my strongest defense. My next move was professional. I went to my office at Alliance Development Group and spoke privately with Mr. Boudreau, my boss. "Mr. Boudreau, I wanted to warn you that I will soon be entering a difficult personal phase: divorce. Naomi, I thought you two were solid. If things go wrong, I need to know I can count on your support." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded firmly. "You are the best controller we've had in 15 years, Naomi. Whatever happens, your job is safe." His support was a human vote of confidence that grounded me. That night, while Remy was at his partners' meeting, I took out the inheritance documents. The logistics were complex, involving the German consulate and international transfers, but the plan was clear. The Miami Beach condo was empty and waiting. With the cash from the German bank, I had financial freedom for years. I organized all the papers: the premarital condo confirmation, the inheritance deeds, the bank statements, and secured them in a small, discreet folder inside my purse. Tomorrow was the night. On the day of the party, I went to the German consulate to formalize the final steps of the inheritance. The consul, a kind-faced older gentleman, confirmed that the ownership of the Miami Beach condo was immediately transferred to my name, and the bank accounts would be unlocked within the week. I left with a profound sense of empowerment. I now owned 3 properties and over $1 million in cash. I made a stop at the bank to set up an account in euros, preparing for the international transfer. The young advisor looked at the numbers on the papers with wide eyes. "Wow, you did very well with the inheritance," she said. Leaving the bank, a massive weight lifted. I no longer feared what Remy planned. But then, right outside the Watergate Hotel, I ran into the main antagonist. I had gone to check on the seating arrangement, and by the entrance a young blonde woman in an expensive coat was talking animatedly on her phone. "Dee, my love, it's incredible," Sierra was saying in a sickly sweet chirping voice. "The ballroom is huge. You promised we'd be living in a huge condo soon." She was standing just feet away. I walked right up to her, my composure absolute. "Excuse me," I asked. "Do you know where the manager's office is?" Sierra turned, looked me up and down with dismissive disdain, and replied, "No idea. I don't work here." She returned to her call, a triumphant smirk on her face. Some lady, I thought, walking away. Tomorrow, this lady was going to deliver a surprise that would change everything. The hotel manager, Mrs. Davies, received me with a practiced professional smile. "Mrs. Price, Mr. Price has spared no expense. Ballroom for 100. Banquet. Live music. $45,000, she confirmed. $45,000 paid for with our savings, all for a platform to publicly tear me down. I maintained a serene expression. I pointed to the central spot. "And the microphone for the toasts?" Mrs. Davies led me to the head table. Right here in the center. Mr. Price insisted everyone hear him. Of course. I returned home to find Remy waiting, pacing nervously with a crumpled piece of paper, his speech, in his hand. He quickly hid it as I entered. "Ah, Naomi, where were you?" "At the restaurant," I replied, checking everything. "Impressive. $45,000 for one night." "Don't worry about it. The money is there. The important thing is to make a good impression." Soon after, Sophia arrived, completely excited. "Dee, son, are you ready? Did you rehearse your speech?" "Of course, Mom. Everything will be perfect." The sight of them huddled together, finalizing their conspiracy, only solidified the rage that had been simmering inside me for weeks. That night, after Sophia had left, Remy locked himself in his study, his voice, rising in a theatrical cadence, carried easily. "Dear friends, today is a special day. 25 years ago, I made a decision that seemed right. But life moves on, and sometimes you have to have the courage to admit your mistakes. Mistakes. I thank Naomi for these years, but honesty demands I speak the truth. We are different people, and I have made a decision." I heard the rest in muffled whispers, but the meaning was brutally clear. He was going to expose me, humiliate me, and then use the ensuing emotional collapse to force me to sign away my home. I went to the closet and pulled out the dress I had bought specifically for this night, an elegant, severe, sky blue sheath. It was a suit of armor, not a party dress. As I laid it out, I felt a strange sense of dissociation. I was preparing not for an anniversary, but for a public confrontation. I took out my folder again, running my fingers over the edge of the papers. The premarital deed, the inheritance documents, the bank statements. They were the embodiment of my truth, my future, and Remy's impending ruin. The next morning, the day of the anniversary, Remy was in a fever of anxious energy. "Naomi," he said, turning from the mirror, a strange, eager smile on his face. "Today is a great day. Tomorrow your life is going to change, and so is mine. Completely." "Completely?" I echoed. "You'll see. You're going to be surprised." I turned and looked at him, one last time as my husband. "Dee," I asked softly, "did you ever really love me? Truly?" He froze. "What a weird question," he stammered, avoiding my eyes. "Of course I loved you, in my own way." I understood. "I understand," I said quietly. The time for pretense was over. The silence in the car was heavy, a suffocating blanket woven with 2 decades of unspoken resentments and the immediate churning anxiety of the imminent confrontation. Remy was driving, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. I sat beside him, watching the familiar Washington, D.C. streets flash by. I wore my sky blue dress, my armor, and my small black purse, which held the documents that would obliterate his carefully constructed reality. When we arrived at the Watergate Hotel, Remy hesitated, taking a deep, visible breath. He turned to me. "Naomi," he said, "no matter what happens today, I want you to know that I wish you the best." The sheer narcissistic cruelty of the statement was breathtaking. "Thank you, Dee," I replied, giving him a serene, unreadable smile. "And I wish you receive exactly what you deserve." He quickly turned away. We walked into the sparkling ballroom, and the performance began. The room was a vision of expensive deceit. 100 guests, white roses, gold candles, a symphony of polished surfaces reflecting the lie we were about to tell. I smiled, accepted congratulations, and played the perfect, radiant wife. But inside, I was a coiled spring, registering every key player in the audience. Sophia, radiant in an expensive gown, floated from table to table, her eyes shining with predatory anticipation. Mr. Boudreau, my boss, gave me a genuinely warm hug, and then there was the target. Sierra stood in the far corner, looking breathtakingly young, introduced to colleagues as the new marketing assistant. The final essential piece of the puzzle was tucked away at a small, isolated table. A man in a dark suit, 50s, stone-faced. Mr. Hayes, the lawyer. He wasn't there to celebrate. He was there as a notary, a vulture waiting for the carcass to be presented. My signed waiver. A hush fell over the ballroom as the master of ceremonies took the stage. "Dear guests," his voice boomed, "may I ask for your attention?" Remy would like to say a few words in honor of his wife. The moment had arrived. Remy stood up, took the microphone, and smiled the broad, calculated smile of a man about to detonate a bomb. I watched him, ready. His voice began confident and smooth, launching into his pre-rehearsed narrative of a life endured with a gray, boring woman. It was time to stop lying. It was time for the truth. Remy's voice grew louder, harder, feeding on the silence and the crowd's shock. I have endured a life with a woman who is not right for me. A gray, boring woman who doesn't know how to be the partner of a successful man. A wave of confused, angry murmurs erupted, but Remy talked over them. Our marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce. He looked straight at Sierra, granting her a pointed, triumphant glance. Sophia's smile was wide, venomous, and completely undisguised. But I didn't shatter. I simply rose. I reached Remy and slipped the microphone from his hand. "Thank you, Darren," I said, my voice quiet, almost sweet, amplified to a startling clarity that silenced the gasping room. "Very honest." Remy stood frozen. "You know, dear friends," I continued, addressing the 100 frozen faces, "Remy is right about one thing. Enough of the lies. I want to speak the truth, too." "The truth is," I stated, my voice like cold, hard steel, "I knew about this whole charade for 3 weeks. I watched Sophia's triumphant smile dissolve into a rictus of horror. I knew about Sierra. I knew about the lawyer, Mr. Hayes, who is sitting quietly right over there, waiting to finalize my humiliation. And I knew about your plan to make me waive my rights to the condo." Mr. Hayes instantly went white. "Naomi, what are you talking about?" Remy finally stammered. I ignored him. "It means," I said, pulling the manila folder from my purse and holding it up for all to see, "that your plan fell apart, darling. You see, you made a tiny, fatal mistake. Our condo is not a shared asset." I paused. "It was a gift from my parents in my name before the marriage. I have the confirming deed right here." Remy took a horrified step back. I pressed the attack. "And what's more," I continued, 3 weeks ago I received an inheritance from my Aunt Josephine in Germany. It includes a condo in Munich, another luxury condo in Miami Beach, Florida, and over $1 million in cash." I looked at him, completely victorious. "So, Remy, what property division are you talking about?" "You'll get half of the cabin and half of your car. Everything else is mine." The silence was absolute. Sierra was a ghastly white by the wall. "And now the fun part," I said. "Do you know how much your successful man spent on this little play to publicly humiliate his wife?" $45,000 of our joint savings. The murmurs turned to outrage. Remy was utterly destroyed. The ballroom erupted. The shocked silence was replaced by a furious cacophony of outrage, accusation, and shock. "Wait, Remy," he whispered. "We can talk about this." I lowered the microphone and fixed him with a look of finality. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Hayes can leave. I don't need him anymore." I then addressed the guests. "Dear friends, I apologize for ruining your evening, but sometimes the truth is more important than appearances. Thank you for coming." I placed the microphone gently on the table and with quiet dignity walked toward the exit. Behind me, pandemonium broke loose. "Remy, you are a complete scoundrel, someone yelled. Sierra tried to slip away, but a knot of indignant women blocked her path. Mr. Boudreau, my CEO, approached Remy, his face etched with contempt. "Darren Price, I am deeply disappointed in you. After this show, I think we will have to review your position in the company." The loss of his job was the first domino to fall. The scene reached a fever pitch near the bar. Sierra, realizing her dream of a rich life was dissolving, pushed her way toward Remy. "Dee, what's going on? You promised me a condo. Where is the money you gave me for our new life?" She was hysterical. Sierra, in a fit of bitter vengeance, revealed his deeper financial rot. He also took out loans using their shared assets as collateral. He took $20,000 from Chase Bank and another $15,000 from Wells Fargo. He spent it all on me. Sophia rushed toward Remy. "Dee, son, what loans? What inheritance of Naomi's?" Remy mumbled, "Mom, now is not the time." Not the time? She shrieked. I mortgaged my mansion to give you money for the lawyer. And now what? How am I going to pay the debt? The realization that his scheme had financially devastated his own mother was the final blow. An older family member of mine, Aunt Clarice, approached him. And did you think about how she felt, living 25 years with an egoist like you? I stood at the hotel entrance, breathing the cool, clean night air, and watched the chaos through the plate glass windows. Remy was trapped in the center of the ballroom, his expensive suit and tailored composure gone. His mother was screaming, his mistress was railing about money, and his boss was abandoning him. The hashtag Dachshund Silver Anniversary Trader was already being coined. I turned and walked toward the waiting taxi. 3 months later, I sat in the sterile silence of the courtroom, watching the final cold dismantling of a 25-year lie. Remy looked 10 years older. The judge read the verdict. Very well. The court decides the following. The condo on M Street in Georgetown is the separate premarital property of Mrs. Naomi Sterling and is not subject to division. Remy slumped in his chair. The cabin property is considered marital property and is divided in half. The same goes for the Lexus ES300 car. The judge continued. Aisha, sitting beside me, offered a discreet smile. Furthermore, the judge stated, it was proven that Mr. Darren Price concealed significant personal debts from his spouse. Total debt is $43,000, since the money was not used for family welfare, but for the personal affairs of the petitioner, he shall be solely responsible for their repayment. Remy went paler. This court solemnly decides to dissolve the marriage between Remy Price and Naomi Sterling, the judge concluded, striking the gavel. I retained the condo and all bank accounts. He retained half the cabin's value and half the car's value, along with the burden of his $43,000 in debts. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a deep, profound peace. Naomi, wait. Remy's voice was a desperate, hoarse cry. He stood on the steps. Forgive me. I was a selfish fool. You didn't deserve what I did to you. I looked at him, no longer with anger, but with quiet detachment. Remy, I don't hold a grudge. We are just very different people. You wanted an easy life at others' expense. I am used to fighting for what is mine. He asked if we could see each other sometimes. No, I replied softly but firmly. It's better if we each go our own way. I walked toward my new car, an elegant Audi, and left the ghost of my former life behind. Remy lost his job a month later. The video of the anniversary party had gone viral. Finding a new job was impossible. The hashtag jar silver anniversary trader followed him everywhere. He ended up working as a taxi driver, using the old Toyota Camry he had to buy back from me. He now lived with Sophia in a small, cramped apartment on the outskirts of the city. Sophia had been forced to sell her beloved suburban mansion. Dee, she would lament, don't you wish you had listened to me? Never gotten involved with that Sierra? It's too late, Mom, he would reply. Too late for regrets. The life I had built for myself was a world away from the toxic remnants of my marriage. I had moved to the Miami Beach condo, the investment property Aunt Josephine had left me. It was a spacious, light-filled oasis with a breathtaking view of the Atlantic Ocean. A true sanctuary. I no longer wanted to be a controller. With the inherited money, I finally pursued my lifelong dream, opening a small publishing house specializing in translations of European literature. Naomi Sterling, Mr. Boudreau had said when I resigned, we don't want you to leave. Are you sure you won't reconsider? I smiled. Thank you, but I found what I'm truly passionate about. I'm dedicating myself to books, he nodded. After everything that happened with your ex-husband, many of our female employees look up to you. A woman has to know how to defend herself. One evening, my friend and lawyer, Aisha, came to visit. You look so content, she noted. Do you feel avenged? You know, I replied thoughtfully, looking out at the lights shimmering over the dark water. I don't feel vengeance. I feel relief. That wasn't vengeance. I just defended my rights. The truth always wins, even if it takes time. Do you regret those 25 years? Aisha asked. I shook my head. No, Those 25 years taught me something invaluable, to only rely on myself and to value honesty above everything else. My small publishing house thrived. I had built a legacy of passion, not property division. A year after the divorce, a thin letter arrived. It was from Remy. Naomi, I just want to say that I understand. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I lost you because I was foolish and greedy. I don't ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that you deserve the best in the world. Be happy, Remy. I read the letter, filed it away. I walked out onto the terrace with a cup of coffee. Miami glittered with lights, and I was free, financially independent, and doing exactly what I loved. For the first time in many years, I felt truly happy. In another part of the country, Remy was driving his old Toyota, picking up strangers, thinking about how one can lose everything in a single, arrogant night. Yes, the truth always conquers the lie. What do you think was Remy's biggest mistake? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to dive deeper into stories of empowerment and second chances, hit the subscribe button and check out my other dramatic tales.